I a little self-conscious about saying this, but I think that my former co-author and I were the first people to come up with that idea of wokeism as a religion in 2014, an essay we published in All Think, Privilege is the Original Sin. We talked about this as a new religion. But you see, so this is the explanatory mechanism for why media, literally every institution you can think of has been captured.
Well, it's the mechanism by which it has contagiously spread. Yes, yeah. Metastasize is actually the exact right term. It's not contagion. It's metastasized across the body politic. And frankly, this is, maybe we will talk a little bit about our mutual friend, James Lindsay. But this is why I have a hard time knowing what to think about where he is, which is that metastasis is, as far as I can tell, and you tell me if you see it differently, it is capable of destroying the West, and it is not a terrible stretch to imagine that it jeopardizes our species in so doing, right? That the world is depending on the West to succeed.
Oh, I see what you mean by species. Yeah, I don't think it's a species-threatening problem. I think that there are too many prophylactics in place in other countries to prevent that from happening.
I don't know how you could think that, frankly, because the problem is there are too many industrial processes on which we collectively depend, that if we suddenly decide that anybody who subscribes to wrongthink is not entitled to work, those things will collapse. And
I know. I don't believe that. That's Tom Friedman's idea of the flat Earth. I don't think that that's true.
Wait, what is?
The idea that, that's why there, theory of the golden arches, for example, no two countries have ever had McDonald's have gone to war with themselves into Yugoslavia. There's something about trade relations.
Yeah, I'm not making that argument.
Oh, what argument are you making?
I'm making the argument that there are technological processes on which we depend that require smart people to operate them. And if you drive all the smart people out because they can't stand being forced to say things they know are false, that those systems will come apart. And when they do, it is not just simply the collapse of Western nations, but it is those technological processes that we are maintaining. And it is not, I'm not saying...
Like what, SWIFT banking systems, or what are you talking about? Or
how about the nuclear reactors?
Okay.
Right? The nuclear reactors require us to maintain vigilance, right? We have a problem that lasts for tens of thousands, arguably hundreds of thousands of years, that we have set in motion, and we don't have a mechanism for getting stupid people to maintain it.
Okay, so let me throw this out to you. I can't believe I'm going to admit this on your podcast, but I'll admit this. When we first had this idea of wokeism as a religion, we tossed around the idea of infecting entire cultures with it. Enemies of the United States, North Korea, Iran. I wouldn't put China as an enemy. But
you were thinking of using it as an offensive weapon?
Yeah, but we didn't know how to deploy it, right? We just didn't know how to deploy critical race theory and social justice. Yeah, they did. They did beat us to it. It spread on its own. I
don't know that. I don't know that. I don't know how we rule out that the fact that we are attacking everything that works, that we are uninventing all of the things on which the West is based, looks to me beyond what a pathology would do.
So I want you to repeat that, because that's so important. We are, what did you say, uninventing?
We are uninventing all of the mechanisms on which the West is based.
That is exactly the issue.
Yep.
Exactly.
Right. But the point that I would make is, if we were neglecting the things that allow the West to work, I could say, okay, that's folly. The fact that we are actively going after everything that works suggests enemy action. Now, I don't know that it's our enemies.
Okay, so Faisal Al-Mutar, one very, very, very close friend of mine, he told me that the Chinese government and the Russians, I think he told me this last year, I can text him and ask him at the end of the podcast, we put it in the YouTube description if you want, and Qatar and Oman, etc., have English language stations that push BLM, CRT, etc., to undermine the foundations of our society. I mean, it's brilliant. You can do it without throwing a bomb. You don't need it's like the whole Star Trek episode where the people walk into the...
Right.
Yeah.
The question is, wokeism is destructive of the fabric of the West.
Unquestionably.
And far less risky.
In fact, it's even intentionally disruptive.
Well, that's what I'm arguing.
Right.
I'm not arguing that I know this to be true, but I'm arguing...
Well, I'm arguing that I know that to be true.
But we would be crazy not to wonder. There are a lot of people...
Not to wonder what? Finish the sentence. Not to wonder what?
If our antagonists in the world, our competitors, were not seeding this into our culture.
Oh yeah, totally. There's no question that they are. I mean, according to Faisal,
there is a question.
Well, I've seen some of the shows,
right. Look,
the BLM stuff coming out. But go ahead.
If the Bolsheviks introduce communism, right, and I think, that's gonna mess up the Russians, and the Russians are my competitors, so I'm going to add some communist propaganda. That's not me taking down Russia.
Correct.
Right? That's me amplifying.
Correct.
The question is, did this woke revolution come from somewhere? Did somebody have a meeting and say, look...
Oh, you're talking about the genesis beyond Foucault, Derrida, Lyotard. You're talking about the way that was...
I'm saying I don't want to assume that I know why the West is deliberately, it would seem, tearing apart every functional structure and replacing it with a fairy tale, right? But
I don't even think they're replacing it with... That's way too much credit. What are they replacing it with? Chaz. I mean, what are they replacing it
That's
with?
a fairy tale. That people
a dystopian one, but okay, I guess I'll give it to you.
The idea that you can get rid of the police and civilization will get better is a fairy tale. It's bullshit, as fairy tales tend to be. So my point is, look, I don't know if wokeism is organic in its inception, and some enemy said, hey, look at this. If we can get the West to embrace this stuff, we won't have to fire a shot.
Yeah.
That's possible. Or it's possible that it came from some enemy to begin with. I don't know. Or maybe it's possible.
I don't.
That it's
how possible. It's always possible. I know it's being funded by, I don't want to go so far as to say enemy regimes, but I guess in the case of Russia, it is an enemy regime. We know that this is being funded right now. I don't know in terms of your comment about the genesis. I don't really know. I mean, it's a built-in divisive, pitting people, genders against each other, pitting races against each other.
Here's the unfortunate problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Religion is not a mind virus. It's an adaptation. Okay.
Yeah, you gave a great lecture on my class about that.
So I don't think this is logically in doubt. I think it's very difficult for people to swallow because they, for a long time, have been rewarded for simply pointing out the folly of much of the analytical content surrounding religion. But that's not really the point. What makes it an adaptation is the behavioral prescriptions. And those are not modern. Those are behavioral prescriptions for a world we don't live in anymore. But nonetheless, the point is the term mind virus has been polluted by the new atheists using it incorrectly for things to which it doesn't apply. However, wokeism is a mind virus, right? It will not function as an adaptation. What will happen to it over time? Total destruction. It will self-destruct.
It has to.
Nothing else is possible because it has no analytical content.
Yeah, not only that. So let's delve into that if you don't mind. So
sure.
I am positive that this is I don't know when the expiration date is. Every time so I've been screaming about this since 2012.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's very frustrating to me. I don't know when the expiration date is. I see how quickly it's go. So I used to think, okay, well, it's in philosophy now, equity, hiring people just because they have certain immutable physical characteristics. As Thomas Sowell said, if you want diversity, then put some Republicans in the sociology department. So I've watched this mind virus.
Yep.
And I used to think, okay, well, then they just think philosophy is not important. And then it went from that to medicine. It went for, I think it was American Airlines has diversity requirements among pilots. Like pilots, holy shit. And clearly nobody's going to say that those things aren't important.
Even if it won, it would lose.
Correct.
Right? Because in the end,
that's a great point.
If if the coalition of the woke won all the power and had the ability to architect the world that it claims it wants, it does not have enough competence to make anything work. But even more troubling,
as Peterson's talked about that,
is the fact that the various different constituents of the coalition would destroy each other, right? So it's self-unstable. There's no question. There's no there, right? So we know that. I don't think it matters when. The only question is, are we going to let it go to fruition, or are we going to stop it before it destroys everything in its path, which is what it's doing? And that's where we are, right? Those of us who both understand the problem with it and are willing to say it out loud.
And willing to reap the consequences of that.
Right. And, they're arbitrary. The thing obviously detests us and, frankly, for understandable reasons.
Lost relationships is a big part of that.
Yep. But that process is worse than we know.
Yeah.
I mean, at the risk of making things difficult for us to parse, what I saw happen with standard wokeness happened with COVID too. I saw COVID wokeness, and frankly, I still see it, right? Our entire medical establishment is pretending to know things that not only does it not know, but that aren't true. And I don't know what you do when suddenly all of your doctors are persuaded of fiction, are effectively embracing a cult, and health is in the balance. I don't know what you do, but that's where we are. And that suggests something even more frightening, which is that the disconnect between the minds of intelligent people and reason is potentially independent of topic.
Yeah, that's what I think we came up with. That's the substitution hypothesis, that people just have to believe something, and then the brain is the hardware and the content is just plugged in.
Well, I don't think that that's generally true, but I think that the dysfunction that we are seeing is happening across domains. And
that's certainly the case.
And the thing that spooks me the most is that some of the people who I thought were most eloquent in spelling out what was wrong with the original version of wokeness missed the boat on COVID. I don't know what to do with that. People who had the immunity to woke thinking when the topic was, race and gender, didn't have what it took when it came to viruses.
I feel the same way about the new atheist and the skeptical movement. The same people who had the tools. And it really is true that the tools are the same. What is your evidence? How do you weigh the evidence? What is the argument against it? You can do, what Tim Van Gelder does, argument mapping, what have you. The tools are the same, but the tremendous irony is that from the skeptical movement and the atheist movement emerged new movements of people who claim to be skeptics and atheists, who themselves were the most dogmatic religious people you would ever meet.
Right, like foot soldiers of these movements that are not supposed to have foot soldiers.
Yes, and then I would point this out to folks, and I will say a difference is, unlike traditional religious people who say, yes, I'm religious, woke people won't say they're religious. That idea hasn't become, I don't know if acceptable or understood or mainstream. I don't know what the word is, but they won't say, yes, I'm religious. I'm the woke religion, or the critical social justice religion.
I mean, in fact, what they do is they claim the mantle of science, which is upside down and backwards. And
that's right.
So I find that we are in the place that we always end up when people of your and my mindset on this get together, which is that we talk ourselves blue in the face trying to say, look, this is not difficult to understand.
No, it's not difficult to understand at all.
It's dangerous, it's frightening,
right?
But it's not hard to see it. The problem is that despite the fact that it's not hard to see it, most do not.